So what I do with these videos is I usually try to give advice that everyone can use. I want it to be evergreen, so I want it to not just work for the moment, but work forever. But also I want it to work for as many people as possible so it can help as many of you as possible. Unfortunately, this isn't always possible because a lot of you are in very different situations, and so you're going to have to do different things in order to get ahead. You're going to have to take different steps in order to start or continue your career. So along those lines, I thought I should address this a bit more. And so that's what I'm going to do in this video. So in this situation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume you graduated from a school, not in translation, but in something else, and then you got a job. And for this particular example, I'll say you got a job at a law firm, not as a lawyer, but just working as a law firm for a couple of years, I guess, or something like that, a year, 2 years, whatever it might be. And I say this because I've had this precise case a couple of times, someone in this precise situation. And so if you're in this situation, so you have gone to school but haven't studied translation, and then you worked in a law firm for a year or two, and you decide that you want to become a translator and you want this to be your career, how do you go about it? Now, I'm not going to address the quality of your translations. Suffice it to say, and I've talked about it in other videos, you should make sure you can translate. So there are various ways of practicing. I have videos where I talk about how to practice, how to see if you're any good or not, and et cetera, et cetera. I won't get into that here, but I will talk about how to set up your career and how to hit the ground running. So your first step is your CV. There are a couple things that you need set up before you even get started, and I talk about this in my course. I call it the pregame, but we're going to start with a CV here. Now let's start with the job section. We're going to assume that your specialization or one of your specializations will be legal. Even though you're not a lawyer, that's fine. But you worked in a law firm, so you worked on a number of things that had to do with law, right? You can basically just take your job description, create some bullet points, and talk about what you did that pertains to law. Now, also take what you did that pertains to languages, so languages or translation, and list that as well. Now, you've taken what you did pertaining to law, and now if you've done it in two different languages, like in both your source and target language, then you want to list that as well. And you can word it differently and say, I dealt with clients from Italy, or I dealt with documentation in French, whatever it might be. But list that to show that you're familiar with legal terminology in both languages, because that helps a lot. And in terms of work experience, you can add other things here too. Maybe you've had summer jobs that had to do with languages or law, or maybe even while you were at school, you were doing some translation on the side, or even if you were teaching your target language or something along those lines, feel free to list that here too. However, be careful, you do not want to list stuff that has nothing to do with translation. Here I'm talking about, say you spent a summer teaching snowboarding, not in your source language, don't bother with that. Because there's this feeling people want to include all the work experience they have, especially if they don't have much, or they don't want to leave gaps in their resume or something like that. Well, here we're not dealing too much with gaps, but when you're applying for a freelance job, it's very different from when you're applying for an office job. An office job, people want to see what kind of person you are all around and whether you're a good fit for the company, whether you can get along with your colleagues and your bosses and whoever it might be. And so they do want all of this surrounding information. But for a freelance job, you just need to show that you can handle the job at hand. So that's why you keep it only at things that have to do with your specialization or with your languages. So anyway, now we go into education. If you took any classes that have to do with law, then you want to add those. If you took any classes that have to do with translation or languages or in your source language or something like that, you want to include that as well. All of this is helpful. And in fact, I would even include extracurricular stuff, like if you were vice president of the Italian club of your school or something, include that as well. It won't make or break the situation, but it does add a little bit. And that's your resume. And so now that you have your resume there ready, you want to rinse and repeat, copy and paste, for pros.com, for translatorscafe.com, for Upwork, for LinkedIn, for whatever it might be. I've said this before as well, post it everywhere. You never know where someone's going to find you. It's free to post your profile on all these pages, so post your profile in all these pages. take whatever it is, a day, a weekend to do it. It's basically just copying and pasting anyway because you already have the information there. Once you put it down once on your resume, you have it. The next step I recommend is to get a paid account at Pros. I won't go into all the reasons why. I've done it before and I talk about it in other places, but just pay for an account. You're going to have to pay for it eventually anyway. And I showed in a previous video, in fact, how if I'm an agency or someone posting a job on Pros, the default is to show it only to paid members. I have to pick to choose it to other members, but the default is only paid members. So you're going to see more jobs. If you want to apply for a job, you have to pay for it anyway. So just get a paid account. Already as freelancers, we have so few expenses. We don't have to worry about getting an office space. We don't have to worry about the commute. We don't have to worry about buying a suit. You know, pay for Pros. Another thing I would recommend doing, and this is pretty much for everyone, is once you start out, start messing around with CAT tools. You can start messing around with the free ones at first, but at least try to get a feel for them. Try to see how you work well with them and look at the various options, because that way when later you want to pay for a CAT tool, which you probably will at some point, it's not 100%, but you probably will, at least you know what you're looking for. Anyway, at this point, you should start applying for jobs. Again, my recommendation at this point, and I go into it more detail in my course, I won't do it here, but it's to apply for a small job and to do it for free. Don't do it for cheap. That's a very different thing. You do it for free. And you're very honest with the client. You say, look, as you can see, I have no ratings or reviews. I want to do this job. I'll do it for free. The only payment I ask for is that you leave me a good rating, as long as you're happy with the translation. Do this 2 or 3 times. Obviously for small jobs, you don't want to be doing it for a huge job. Do it for small jobs 2 or 3 times, and then you're ready to hit the ground running. Because at that point you have 2 or 3 positive reviews, you can start charging for translations and get your career going. For someone in this situation that they're just starting out and they have that type of experience, this is usually what I recommend. I offer advisorship, consultancy, or at least I did more before. I don't do much now. Usually if someone was in that situation, that's what I would propose. Obviously the devil's in the details because everyone has very different details for a bunch of stuff. But broadly speaking, those are the steps that I recommend taking. Let me know if you have any other situations you'd like me to deal with or me to address. Maybe you're in a slightly different situation. Maybe you've already started your career and you want to do something else, or you're in a completely different situation when you're starting, or whatever it might be. Let me know if you have any questions as well. I'm happy to address them. And otherwise, I'll talk to you next time. Okay, thanks. Bye. Savedum.